Adrian Cole was the kind of man who could make people uncomfortable with just a look. At 35, he had built an empire on takeovers and iron-fisted negotiations. Nothing slipped past him. People called him the collector behind his back because once Adrian wanted something, he always took it, and he never played games he couldn't win. On the top floor of a glass tower in downtown Chicago, Adrian was celebrating another victory. Another company absorbed another old shareholder, forced out another round of champagne poured for friends who secretly feared him as much as they admired him. The party glittered with silk ties and expensive watches, a soft jazz band playing near the windows. Adrian barely smiled. He hated parties, but winning demanded appearances. He leaned on the balcony railing, eyes drifting over the city skyline until a familiar voice broke in behind him, his oldest friend from college. Brent Mallory, the only person who still dared to laugh in his face, stepped beside him holding 2 glasses of whiskey. "You look bored," Cole, Brent said, using his last name the way only close friends did. "I am," Adrian said flatly. Brent laughed, clinked his glass to Adrian's without asking if he wanted it. "You have everything, but I swear to God you're allergic to fun." Adrian sipped the whiskey without looking at him. "Winning is fun." Brent raised an eyebrow. "Winning isn't fun when there's no challenge." Adrian smirked faintly. "Then give me a challenge." Brent turned his head, scanning the large room. His eyes landed on a woman kneeling near the far wall. The cleaning staff had come early, discreetly wiping wine splashes off the marble floors before they stained. One of them, a woman, was scrubbing at the edge of the buffet table, oblivious to the suits and chatter around her. She was broad-shouldered, solidly built, her uniform slightly too tight at the arms and loose at the waist. There was no makeup on her round face, her hair tied back in a no-nonsense knot. She worked quickly, expertly, like she had done it 1,000 times. Brent nudged his shoulder. There's your challenge." Adrian barely flicked his gaze over. "A cleaning lady." Brent's grin widened. "Not just any cleaning lady. See her? She's heavier than any model you parade around. No diamonds, no heels. Bet you couldn't keep her at your side for a month, let alone 6. Adrian snorted softly. "That's idiotic." "Is it?" Brent leaned closer, voice low enough not to carry. "Everyone here knows you can buy any girl you want. But you couldn't keep that one. Not her. Look at her. She doesn't care who you are. That terrifies you more than any competitor." Adrian's jaw flexed as he studied the woman again. She had shifted closer to the tables, dipping a rag into a bucket of soapy water, wringing it out, moving with a steadiness he almost respected, as if the world above her rank and paycheck didn't exist. Brent sensed the spark. "Come on, marry her. 6 months. If you can turn her into one of your perfect trophies, I'll triple my next investment round. But if you fail, you hand me back 10% of Cole Holdings." Fair Adrian tilted his head, amused by the absurdity. "You're drunk." "I'm right. She's the only thing here you can't buy with a card swipe." Adrian's eyes narrowed. Brent was baiting him, poking at the only nerve he had left. Control. Everyone and everything bent. Eventually, he made sure of it. But this simple woman scrubbing wine stains, she didn't even glance up to see who watched her. 6 months. Brent grinned like a boy who just lit a match. 6 months. She lives with you, wears what you choose, does what you say. Make her yours. Prove there's no one you can't tame. Adrian's pulse flicked faster just once. He sipped the whiskey again, then pushed the glass onto the railing. "Deal." Brent's laugh boomed over the music. "Wait, you're serious?" Adrian didn't answer. He pushed off the railing, set his suit straight, and started walking. The music, the chatter, the swirl of perfume and expensive shoes faded behind him. His eyes locked on the cleaning lady, Lena Ward, stitched in small letters on her shirt pocket. He memorized it as he crossed the polished floor. When Lena felt the shadow fall over her hands, she looked up. Her eyes met his clear, unbothered brown flecked with green under the harsh ceiling lights. She didn't blink, didn't stammer, didn't drop the rag. "Sir?" she asked simply. Adrian studied her. Up close, he could see the edge of weariness in her skin, the calluses on her knuckles, the plain, cheap sneakers on her feet. A woman made of work, not of show. "What's your name?" he asked, though he knew. "Lena Ward, sir." "Do you know who I am?" She didn't flinch. "Yes." Adrian let that hang. Lena didn't offer more. She dipped the rag, squeezed it again, eyes flicking once at the stubborn stain at her side. "I have a proposition, Miss Ward." She stopped, waited. Adrian lowered his voice so only she would hear. "Marry me." The rag dripped once onto the marble. "Excuse me, marry me. 6 months. I'll give you a penthouse, a monthly allowance, clothes, whatever you want. In return, you'll be my wife in public and do as I say in private." Around them, the party laughed and clinked glasses, oblivious to the crack in the marble floor beneath the rag. Lena's brows pinched. She looked at him fully as if weighing whether to laugh at his face. Why Adrian didn't smile. "Because I can." Lena set the rag back into the bucket. She wiped her hands on her apron slowly, as if giving herself a few more seconds to process the insanity standing in front of her. "I keep my job." "No, you don't." "I keep my job," she repeated, firm. "I work night shifts. I come and go when I need to." Adrian stared at her, something twisted at the edge of his mouth. "Fine. And you don't touch my money," she said. "I don't need your gifts." Adrian's eyes sharpened. He didn't like the rules reversed, but Brent's grin floated back behind his eyes. 6 months. Nothing to lose. Agreed. Lena nodded once. Then she dipped the rag again, turned her eyes back to the floor, scrubbing the stain as if the conversation had never happened. Adrian watched her a moment longer. The cleaning lady who looked him in the eye. The joke he would turn into proof. He would win this too. He always did. The marriage happened exactly 1 week later. It did not happen in a chapel with flowers or an aisle. It happened in a stiff county office on a rainy Monday morning. There were no rings, no vows beyond the clerk's dry instructions, no smiling relatives. Lena Ward wore her cleaning uniform beneath a plain gray coat. Adrian Cole wore the same black suit he wore to board meetings. He signed the papers like they were another acquisition. Lena signed like she was clocking in for another night shift. When the clerk handed them the certified copy, Adrian took it, folded it into the inner pocket of his jacket, and simply said, "It's done. Let's go." Outside, the rain dripped down the courthouse steps. A black town car waited at the curb. Adrian opened the door for Lena himself, studying her from above as she paused before climbing in. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. She didn't smile, didn't thank him, didn't pretend to soften the moment. In the back seat, she kept her hands in her lap, thumbs brushing over the worn hem of her coat sleeve. Adrian watched her in the reflection of the window. She didn't look at him once as the car threaded through traffic toward the high-rise where he lived. "You can quit the cleaning job now," he said, finally voice even. "No." Lena didn't even look up. Her voice was steady, her eyes focused on the city beyond the glass. "I said you don't have to work. I said I'm keeping my job." Adrian leaned back, studying her profile, the line of her jaw that tightened just slightly when she was done talking. He could have pressed the point, reminded her who paid for the penthouse she was about to step into, who held the marriage license she had just signed. Instead, he let the silence settle. When the car pulled into the underground garage, Lena stepped out first. She carried nothing but the small fabric bag she'd brought from her tiny rented room. A single coat, a pair of shoes that had holes at the seams. Adrian trailed her to the private elevator, swiping his access card. The doors closed, sealing them in the soft hum of expensive air and brushed metal. "You'll have new clothes by tonight," he said, voice casual, almost bored. "No, thank you." "You'll need them, Lena. We'll have photos. Parties. People will expect." "No, thank you." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The words slid through the polished elevator like a quiet strike of flint on steel. Adrian's jaw ticked once. The elevator chimed. The doors opened to the penthouse floor. He stepped out first. She followed, eyes sweeping the gleaming white marble, the soft recessed lights, the tall windows spilling the gray city skyline into the living room. A housekeeper stood at the side, eyes down, waiting for instructions. Next to her, a personal stylist fidgeted with a rack of clothes so new they still carried faint chemical scents of the boutique. Adrian turned, gesturing to the wide glass wall that faced the city. "You'll sleep here. The master bedroom is on the other side." "I'll take the guest room," Lena said simply. Adrian's eyebrow lifted. "Excuse me?" "The guest room," she repeated. "I don't want your bed." A flicker of something sharp cut across Adrian's eyes. He stepped closer, voice dropping to something quieter, colder. "Do you really think this attitude will work for you, Lena? You signed. You're mine for 6 months." She tilted her chin up just slightly. "I signed for 6 months of your name, not 6 months of pretending to be your doll. If that's a problem, annul it now." Adrian's mouth curved, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He glanced at the stylist. "Take the clothes to the guest room closet. She'll wear them when she's ready." Lena's eyes didn't move from his face. She waited until the staff wheeled the rack past her before she stepped away, her cheap shoes squeaking faintly on the marble. The door to the guest room closed with a soft click. For a few seconds, Adrian just stood there in the hall. He had expected tears, confusion, fear, maybe clumsy gratitude. He got none of it. Instead, he got a woman who didn't blink twice, at a penthouse worth millions, who refused silk dresses like they were paper napkins. He turned, pulling his phone from his pocket. Brent's name lit up his messages. One simple line. "How's the new Mrs. Cole?" Adrian typed back, "She'll come around." He hit send, slipped the phone away, and told himself it was true. Lena did not come around. Days passed. She woke up before the sun made coffee that she drank alone and left without telling anyone where she was going. She cleaned empty offices at night, signed pay slips with the name Lena Ward, not Lena Cole. She came back to the penthouse after midnight, washed her hands, locked herself in the guest room. She left no scent of perfume in the hallway, no stray hair on the pillowcases Adrian never touched. She ate toast for breakfast. She never touched the imported cheeses or the luxury pastries the cook stocked just for her. She didn't even turn on the big television Adrian had pointed at like a trophy the first day she arrived. One morning, Adrian watched her from the hallway as she pulled on her old shoes, laces frayed to strings. "You don't have to do this," he said, arms crossed. "I can replace those for you." "I know." She tied the knot, stood, and slipped past him without a word more. Behind her, the door clicked shut. Adrian found himself alone, surrounded by glass walls and steel beams that reflected a man who always got what he wanted. A man who was suddenly not sure who exactly was winning this game. The wedding papers made headlines only once, buried under bigger stories about Cole Holdings' latest acquisition. The media called it strange, unexpected. A quiet marriage to a nobody. Nobody cared for long. It was a headline that flickered, then vanished. But inside the penthouse, the game kept breathing like a silent animal in the walls. Adrian's people delivered new clothes to the guest room closet every week. Dresses, jackets, shoes, and boxes lined with tissue. They stayed untouched. Lena wore the same faded work uniform, the same dull coat when she stepped out before dawn. He once watched her slip $20 bills into envelopes, sealing them with short notes before leaving. She never explained. She never hid it either. One evening, Adrian waited in the dining room. A chef prepared lamb, imported cheese, fresh bread. The table gleamed with polished silver and thin crystal. Lena stepped in, dropped her bag by the door, and paused at the sight of him waiting. She smelled faintly of disinfectant and cold air. "Sit," he said. She sat. He watched her pick up the fork and knife with careful, neat hands. She chewed slowly, her eyes never straying to his. She ate like she was alone. Halfway through, Adrian tapped his glass once. "You should quit the job, Lena." She finished chewing, set the fork down. "Why?" "It's unnecessary. You have everything here. You don't need to scrub floors anymore." She wiped her mouth on the cloth napkin. "You can't buy everything, Adrian." He leaned forward slightly. I can buy time. I can buy peace. I can buy anything you think you need. She looked at him properly, eyes clear and unafraid. Then why are you trying so hard to buy me? Adrian's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. Lena stood, folded her napkin, left half the lamb untouched. Thank you for dinner. She left him there alone at the table for the first time in years. The city lights outside the window blurred in the glass. He pushed his plate away, suddenly not hungry for any of it. The next day, Adrian called in his assistant. Find out where she's going when she leaves. I want everything. Within hours, reports landed on his desk. Lena Ward, born in a rundown neighborhood. No parents on record except an old death certificate for a man named Charles Ward. Foster homes. Minimum wage jobs. Never finished college. Paid off a neighbor's hospital bill last winter. Gave cash donations to a rundown church in the South Side. Nothing that explained her calm. Nothing that explained the steel in her eyes. Adrian stared at the report for a long time, fingers drumming the table. Then he picked up the phone. Fire her, he told his HR director. No more shifts. Sir, she's under contract. Fire her. It was done. The next morning, Lena stood in the kitchen making coffee when Adrian stepped in, adjusting his cufflinks. You won't be cleaning floors tonight. She poured coffee into her mug. You did this. You're my wife now. Act like it. She sipped her coffee calmly, not looking at him. You're wasting your time. You signed the papers, Lena. She turned, meeting his eyes over the rim of the mug. So did you. He almost laughed at the way she said it. Almost. That evening, Lena did not leave. She stayed in the guest room, door shut. Adrian stood in the hallway, listening to the silence pressing through the walls. He knocked once. No answer. He turned the handle. Locked. 2 days later, he found her gone before sunrise. He waited until she returned, her shoes wet from snow, her hair damp under her hood. Where were you? She brushed past him, pulled her coat off. Working. You don't have a job anymore. She didn't look at him. I found another one. Where? The church downtown. I clean for them now. They pay cash. Adrian stared at her. You're my wife. You don't need to work like this. She finally turned. Her face was calm, but her eyes were fierce. Then why does it bother you so much? She stepped into the guest room, closed the door, and left him there with his mouth open. The next week, Adrian made it harder. He called the church, donated a large sum under the condition Lena Ward stay off payroll. The pastor agreed, confused but eager. Lena found out the next day. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply packed up her old cleaning kit, found another job at a nonprofit shelter across town. Night shifts, minimum wage, cash in an envelope. Adrian pushed harder. He called the nonprofit. He pulled the same strings. Doors closed. Lena found another. He closed that too. Each time he pushed, she pushed back by simply standing. By scrubbing floors no one noticed. By handing out money she barely kept for herself. By coming home to the penthouse like a ghost in the middle of marble and steel. He tried gifts. Jewelry, designer coats slipped onto her bed. She moved them into the hallway without a word. He ordered chauffeurs to drive her. She waved them away, waiting for the bus like she always had. One night he waited at the door when she came home. The snow clung to her shoes, dripping onto the perfect tile. Why, Lena? She untied her scarf, pulled off her gloves. Why what? Why do you keep doing this? She dropped her scarf onto the radiator. Because I can. She walked past him, her shoulders brushing his sleeve. He smelled the faint lemon of the disinfectant she used at the shelter. He smelled nothing of fear. Adrian didn't sleep that night. He stood by the tall windows watching the city lights flicker in the cold. Lena's door stayed shut. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Brent. How's the pet project? Adrian didn't answer. He deleted the message. He watched the empty street below, and wondered how a woman with nothing could make him feel like he had nothing too. He tried one last thing, a meeting with his legal team. He pushed a paper across the table. "Can we break it?" One lawyer frowned. "The marriage. Only if both parties sign an annulment or divorce, sir." Adrian closed the folder. Of course. When he got home, Lena was sitting on the couch, shoes lined up neatly beside her bag. She looked up at him, eyes tired, but steady. "What do you want, Adrian?" He sat down across from her, something between anger and fascination burning in his throat. "What are you hiding?" She tilted her head. "I'm not hiding anything. You are. Why are you still here?" She stood up. "Because you asked me to be." She left him with that. He sat there for a long time, the city humming around him. In his own penthouse, surrounded by everything he ever wanted, Adrian Cole realized for the first time he was not the hunter in this game. And maybe he never had been. Winter came harder than usual that year. The city streets froze in long sheets of black ice. Wind rattled the corners of skyscrapers, and Adrian Cole's penthouse windows blurred with frost every morning. But inside, nothing thawed between him and Lena. Adrian thought he had seen every version of resistance: competitors who played dirty, shareholders who threatened lawsuits, board members who leaked deals to the press. He crushed them all. But Lena Ward's resistance was not loud or reckless. It was quiet, patient, a soft force that never moved but never broke. And the quieter she was, the more it scraped at the parts of him that needed control, like blood. He knew she was still working at night somewhere. He knew she was slipping out of the building past his security. He knew she was giving money to people he couldn't trace. But every time he tried to corner her, she stepped right past him with a look that said he would never catch her. Not really. One night, Adrian snapped. He sat in his home office, the city lights flickering in the glass behind him, a single lamp throwing long shadows on the desk. He read the same short file for the 100th time. Lena Ward, age 30, parents unknown. Ward as foster father. One piece of paper from decades ago, an adoption record. Another piece, a death certificate. Nothing else. He slammed the folder shut, pushed back from the desk, and walked straight to the guest room door. He didn't knock this time. He opened it. Lena was inside, sitting cross-legged on the floor, papers spread around her. Not his new designer clothes. Old files, yellowed envelopes, handwritten letters so faded the ink bled. She didn't look up when he stepped in. She picked up a letter, unfolded it carefully, her thumb tracing a line near the top. "What is that, Lena?" She answered without lifting her eyes. "Memories." His eyes flicked to the papers. They were old board meeting notes, black and white photographs of men in suits shaking hands. A younger version of Adrian's father stared back at him in one photo, a stiff smile on his face beside a man Adrian vaguely recognized from the company's archives, Charles Ward. He stepped closer. "Why do you have these?" Lena lifted her eyes now. For the first time in weeks, her voice carried a sharp edge. "Because they belong to me." Adrian knelt, grabbed one photo. His father and Ward again, standing in front of the old brick building that used to be the first Cole and Ward headquarters. He looked at Lena. "What are you doing with this?" She sat back, her palms flat on her knees. Her eyes met his without blinking. "Did you ever wonder how your father bought this company so cheaply?" Adrian's jaw ticked. He knew the story, a buyout during a rough year, old debt settled for pennies, Charles Ward stepping down for health reasons. The company rebranded as Cole Holdings. End of story. "Your father destroyed mine," she said softly. He ruined him in boardrooms and courtrooms. He forced him to sign over shares at half their value. And when there was nothing left, he left him to rot. Adrian stared at her. The words didn't settle. They slid around his skull like ice on marble. "You're lying." Lena shook her head. "You know I'm not. That's why you're angry." He looked at the papers again. Signatures, old contracts, scans of legal letters. He saw Ward's name again and again. Beside it, sometimes in bold print, his own father's name. He felt a sharp taste at the back of his throat, bitter metal. "You married me because of this," he said. His voice was quiet now, the fight in it almost burned out. No. Lena leaned forward, her palms braced on the floor between them. I married you because you asked. You thought it was a joke. You thought I was a joke. But I knew what you were. I knew whose son you were. Adrian's eyes narrowed. And what, Lena? You thought you'd ruin me by living here, by mopping floors behind my back? Her lips pressed into a thin line. I thought I'd wait. And I did. I waited until I could find every piece your father buried. And you handed it to me yourself when you brought me here. He barked a short laugh that didn't sound like laughter at all. You think this? He gestured to the papers scattered on her floor. This is enough to break me. No. She said it so simply it stopped him. It's enough to remind you of what you are, of what you come from. You wanted to own me. You can't. You never could. She stood then, carefully gathering the old papers back into a neat stack. Adrian didn't move. He watched her fingers slide the photos into an envelope. Where is it? He asked, voice flat. Where is what? The proof. The real proof. You're smart enough not to keep it all here. Lena looked at him, her face unreadable. Her eyes were steady, but for the first time he saw a flicker of something. Maybe pity, maybe regret. It's safe, Adrian. Safer than you. He stepped closer, so close she could smell his cologne, the expensive fabric of his shirt brushing her sleeve. And if I take it? You won't, she said. He leaned down, eyes level with hers. How do you know? Because I've already given it to someone who hates you more than I do. Adrian's breath caught. A single flash of rage flickered, but behind it something heavier. Something he hadn't felt since he was a boy sitting in courtrooms. He didn't understand while lawyers whispered about debt, ruin, power. He stepped back. The papers blurred in his eyes. He wanted to tear them apart, burn them, toss them out the window. But he didn't. Because he knew somewhere deep down, she had already won this round. He turned left the guest room without another word, the door swinging softly shut behind him. Inside, Lena gathered her father's old letters, smoothed the creases one more time, and whispered to herself that she was almost done waiting. For the next week, the penthouse felt like a museum of glass and cold air. Adrian moved through its halls without touching anything. The floors gleamed. The windows framed the city like a photograph. But everywhere he looked, he saw her. Lena Ward, the cleaning lady, who mopped floors by night and who sat on secrets by dawn. He called Brent. Brent laughed at first, then stopped when he heard Adrian's tone. She's just a cleaning lady, Cole. Pull the plug. Make it go away. It's not that simple, Adrian said quietly. He hung up without saying goodbye. At night he lay awake, listening for her steps in the hallway. They were always soft, like she barely disturbed the marble under her feet. She left before sunrise, came back past midnight, always alone, always carrying her worn bag that never looked heavier or lighter, no matter what he did. He ordered his people to dig deeper. They found nothing. No hidden bank account. No trace of the real files she'd threatened him with. Just donations that passed through her hands to the same shelter she cleaned. A check to an old man's hospice. A church's broken roof paid off. Tiny things done quietly, like she was erasing bad debts she didn't owe. The more he read, the more the words blurred. One night, he went to her door again. He knocked. She didn't answer. He pushed it open. Lena was awake, sitting on the edge of her narrow bed. The old adoption papers were gone. Instead, she was folding her work uniform, smoothing the creases, pressing it into a small, neat square. You don't have to pretend anymore, Adrian said. His voice was soft, but it scraped his throat. She looked up. Pretend what? That you're doing this for them. The shelters. The neighbors. The charity. You're doing this to punish me. Lena tilted her head slightly. Maybe I am. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. The night outside the window was black and soft with snow muffling the city noise below. "Why, Lena?" She didn't smile. "You know why." Adrian sat down in the chair by her desk. He looked at the plain lamp, the battered bag on the floor, the single pair of old shoes lined up against the wall like they were waiting for permission to run. "Tell me anyway." She watched him for a long moment, as if deciding if it was worth saying out loud. Then she sighed. "When I was little, Charles Ward taught me how to clean offices because he said no job was beneath us. When I was older, he taught me how to read a balance sheet because he said no truth should hide from us. When he died, your father told the press he was a fool who couldn't keep up with big money." Adrian flinched. The words landed like small cuts, dull but real. He wasn't a fool. He trusted people, and he paid for it with everything. I'm just finishing what he couldn't. Adrian's hands closed into fists on his knees. "You could have sued, sold your story, ruined my name 100 other ways. I could have," Lena agreed. "But then you'd just rebuild it. You'd say the right things on camera, donate to the right foundations, buy the next company twice as big. You'd survive it. So what do you want?" He heard the edge in his own voice, sharp and almost desperate. "I want you to see it for yourself," she said. "I want you to stand in your own house and know that you didn't win. Not everything. Not everyone." They stared at each other. The heater kicked on with a soft hum. The city lights flickered behind her like embers behind glass. Adrian leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "What if I fix it?" Lena laughed softly, no humor, no warmth. "You can't fix the past. I can try." She shook her head. "You don't know how. Teach me." She looked at him like she didn't believe him. Maybe she didn't. She stood, picked up her bag, and set it on the desk. "I'm leaving tomorrow." The words hit him like ice water. "No, you're not." "Yes." She met his eyes. "The contract ends when I say it does." He felt something inside him crack. "You can't, I can." She said it gently, like she was explaining a simple fact to a child. "And you can't stop me." He stood too fast. The chair tipped back, hit the wall with a dull thud. "You think you have the upper hand," he said low and hard. "You think you can just walk away." She stepped closer. "I don't think it. I know it." Her calm was unbearable. Adrian felt the rage rising, the panic under it, the hollow cold that sat in his chest like a stone. He grabbed her wrist, not tight enough to hurt, but enough to feel the pulse beneath her skin. "Where is it, Lena? The files. The proof." She didn't pull away. Her voice was steady. "Safe. With who?" "Someone who doesn't want your money." He searched her face, looking for a crack, a lie, a tremor in her eyes. There was none. He dropped her wrist. The distance between them felt like a chasm. She picked up her bag again. "You should get some sleep, Adrian." When she stepped past him, he caught the faintest scent of cleaning soap and cold air. He heard the door close behind her and knew he would not sleep that night or any night after, not until he understood what game she was really playing. The next morning, she didn't leave. She sat in the kitchen, coffee cup in both hands, watching the gray dawn creep across the floor. Adrian stood by the doorway, shirt sleeves rolled, tie undone, feeling the weight of everything he could not control pressing against his ribs. "If you go," he said quietly, "I lose." She looked at him over the rim of the cup. "Then maybe you should think about what you're trying so hard to win." He wanted to ask her to stay. He wanted to demand it, order it, make it law, like everything else he commanded. But he knew it wouldn't work. So he didn't say anything at all. Instead, he watched her sip the last of her coffee stand, wash the mug carefully in the sink, dry it, and set it upside down on the rack. She brushed past him, her shoulder barely grazing his arm, and in that soft contact he felt the cold space where something warm could have lived. When she was gone, the penthouse felt larger than ever. Every window gleamed, every surface shone, everything perfect, untouched, spotless. Except him. Adrian Cole was not a man who begged. Not for money, not for loyalty. not for power, and certainly not for a woman who had once knelt on marble floors scrubbing stains from shoes that cost more than she earned in a month. But 3 days after Lena Ward walked out of his penthouse, Adrian found himself doing exactly that. He tried first the way he always did, by fighting. He called every contact that owed him favors. He leaned on lawyers who had buried worse scandals than a hidden share theft. He offered money to the right people to find Lena's files, trace every copy. But each lead ended in an empty folder, a polite refusal, or worse, a gentle warning that this time his name would not be enough to hush it all. His shareholders heard the rumors before he did. A leaked letter here, an old document there. Whispers of how Cole Holdings was built on betrayal, intimidation, ruin. His father's shadow stretching long enough to cover him too. In the boardroom, his oldest allies stared at him with cold, unreadable faces. One by one they asked questions he had no simple answers for. He could have blamed it all on Lena. She was an easy scapegoat, a cleaning lady turned con artist. But every time he imagined telling that story, he saw her eyes in the back of his mind. The quiet strength. The way she'd said, "You can't own me," like it was truth, carved in stone. He stopped sleeping. He ate alone at the same long dining table where she used to sit without looking at him. He poured coffee into the same mug she used, just to hold it warm in his hands. The penthouse smelled like nothing now. Clean air, clean glass, too clean. On the 4th night he left. No security detail, no car. He walked through the city in a coat too thin for the wind, searching for places he thought she might be shelters. She used to clean churches with broken roofs. She once patched with quiet donations. He asked questions that made people frown at him. The CEO with the expensive shoes wandering around asking for a woman most people only knew as the lady with the mop and the soft smile. He found her at dawn sitting alone in the back pew of a small church on the south side. The door creaked when he stepped in. She didn't turn around. She sat still, her shoulders hunched against the cold, a knit hat pulled low on her head. He stood behind her, throat dry. "Lena." She didn't move. He stepped closer, slipped into the same pew, leaving a respectful space between them. "You should go," she said quietly. "I can't." She let out a soft, tired laugh that carried no humor. "You can do anything, Adrian. That's the problem." He looked at the simple wooden cross at the front of the sanctuary. The early sun broke through stained glass, painting soft colors on the floor between them. "I know what my father did," he said. "I knew some of it, but not all." Her silence said she didn't believe him. "I didn't come here to clear my name," he said, "or buy you off, or make a deal. I came here because I don't know how to fix it alone." Lena turned finally. Her face looked softer without the penthouse's harsh lights. No anger there, just the same calm wall he'd been pushing against for months. "Why do you care now?" He breathed in, steadying the words that felt too big for his mouth. "Because I can't stand in that house anymore and pretend I own it. I can't stand in that boardroom and pretend my name means something good. I can't stand in my own skin and pretend I'm still winning." She looked at him for a long time, like she was searching for any cracks in what he said. He held her eyes, trying not to flinch under her quiet judgment. "And if I help you," she asked, "what then?" He swallowed. "Then you own the truth. And maybe I can find out if there's anything left in me worth keeping." She turned her eyes back to the front, letting the silence stretch. He sat beside her, unmoving, the cold wooden pew pressing against his spine. Finally, she spoke so soft he almost didn't hear it. "You can't erase what was done, but you can do something better with what's left." "Tell me how," he said. She stood, pulling her knit hat lower over her ears. "Start with the people your father stepped on. Pay them back. Not just money. Time. Care. Protection. And you?" he asked, voice almost breaking. "What about you?" Lena looked at him, and for a moment he saw something fragile flicker across her face, something that hurt more than any rumor, any threat. "I'm not yours to fix, Adrian. I never was." He stood too. The church around them creaked as old wood settled under the cold. "Let me try anyway," he said. She looked down at the floor, then back at him. The faintest ghost of a smile touched her mouth. "Then start walking." She stepped past him toward the heavy church doors. Adrian stood frozen for a second, then followed her into the early light, breaking over a city that suddenly looked too big for a man who once thought he could hold it all. Adrian Cole did not rebuild overnight. The morning after that silent dawn in the church, he stepped into the glass fortress that bore his name and felt every gaze pierce him in places money could never armor. The board demanded answers. Reporters circled the tower like wolves hungry for the next headline. His lawyers whispered exit plans. His shareholders calculated how much blood they would lose if he fell. For the first time, Adrian did not bark orders to make it all disappear. He did not pay hush money. He did not slam shut the doors on the truth Lena Ward had forced him to face. Instead, he stood at the long table in the boardroom where so many silent deals had passed like poisoned gifts. He told them exactly how the company was built. He named the men who buried debts under other men's graves. He named his father. He named himself. Half the room looked at him like he was mad. Maybe he was. But when he stepped out of that building, a part of him that had always coiled tight, some small black knot began to loosen. It was not simple. He sold off holdings that should have made him richer. He signed away properties that once fed his empire like gold veins. He turned shares into seed funds for small businesses for families like Charles Ward's, like Lena's, who never got their second chance when the wolves came. His name shrank on the corporate masthead as the word trust finally found room to breathe beside it. He saw Lena sometimes. Not at his penthouse, not in boardrooms, never in places that smelled of marble and perfume and expensive silence. He saw her in places where walls peeled paint in the winter, where volunteers unpacked boxes of warm blankets for shelters, where tired mothers clutched grocery bags like fragile treasure. She was always there before him, clipboard in hand, sleeves rolled, hair pulled back. Sometimes she looked at him with something close to a nod. Other times she looked right through him and spoke only to the people who really needed to hear her. Months passed. Spring folded the city's sharp edges into something softer. One evening, Adrian found himself standing in front of the small community center that now carried a new name in fresh paint, Ward Foundation. He stepped inside carrying no briefcase, wearing no suit. Just a man with sleeves pushed to his forearms, palms empty. He found her sorting donated boxes in a back hallway, hair tied up, flannel shirt cuffed at her elbows. She looked up when she heard his shoes scuff the old linoleum. "You shouldn't keep coming here, Adrian. I'm not here for the press. Or for you, really." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what are you here for?" He held her eyes steady for once, no teeth bared behind perfect words. "To help stack boxes. If you'll let me." She studied him a moment. Then she pointed with her chin to the far corner. "Gloves are in the bin. Labels on the left. Try not to mess them up." "Mess." She turned back to her work. He stepped around her, brushing her shoulder only slightly. For 2 hours they worked in the dusty quiet, sorting and taping, lifting and stacking. No one asked his name here. No one cared who he had been. They cared only that the boxes were heavy, and the hall was cold, and there was work to be done. When they finished, he set the last box down, turned to find her leaning against the wall, watching him. He searched her face for anger, for softness, for anything that told him what came next. "I can't undo what I was, Lena. No, you can't." He breathed in. "Let it out. But I can stay, if you let me." She pushed away from the wall, stepped closer. Her eyes still held that steel he had first seen when she looked up from scrubbing a stain he'd long since forgotten. But there was warmth now, too, in the corners, where her mouth softened. "Maybe." She said it like an offer he didn't deserve but might earn if he was patient enough. Adrian nodded once, almost a bow. "Then I'll be here." He turned to pick up another empty box, and behind him, he heard her soft laugh, a sound warmer than the spring air drifting through the open back door, carrying a promise that sometimes even the coldest men can be scrubbed clean if they learn how to hold a broom beside the right pair of hands.